The blue course.
It's
Oh,
pretty
yeah.
gentle tap, dude.
Just like close.
You want to break it?
We got a good board.
I've used that one before. You can get a good grab.
Call the meeting to order. Want to start this roll call, Cheryl?
Yes, Hunter here.
Zalad here.
Keequam here.
Gunning here.
Coin here.
Bars here.
Fig here.
Agenda item number 3, approval of the agenda.
I move we approve the agenda as submitted.
A second.
Motion by Fig, support by Coin. To approve tonight's agenda. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. The agenda's approved. And item 4, approval of regular meeting minutes from November 19th. I think everybody has a copy in your packet.
So moved.
Second. Support.
Motion by Bars, support by Fig, to approve the meeting minutes of November 19th, 2019. Hearing no comment, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Meeting minutes are approved. Item 5, public comment. Nobody in the galley, so we can move on to reports. Accounts payable. You got it? Do that, Mark?
Thank you and good evening, everybody. Before I get started, I'd just like to make an introduction. Over here is Mr. Rodney Nanny. He is joining the Township team as the new Community Economic Development Department Director. And so he's going to be providing support to this body, the Planning Commission, Zoning Board of Appeals, all things related to land use, code enforcement, just to try to, it's part of a reorganization that the Board of Trustees approved some time ago. And we'd spent quite a bit of time doing a search effort. Mr. Nanny has been in the business quite a while. He's a certified planner, has worked with a number of, he currently owns his own consulting firm. He'll be a full-time employee of the township, be kind of backing out of that business. But in that endeavor has supported quite a few townships and counties in their planning efforts. So he was able to come tonight, wanted to make the introduction. You'll be seeing more of him as time goes by. I think it's going to be a real asset to the organization.
Welcome.
Welcome.
Thank you very much.
So getting into your agenda, the first item is approval of your accounts payables for the month. The East DDA, they total $8,554.17. Consumers Energy's monthly bill is $802 and some change. MMI, their monthly bill $398 to help with the, that's their November invoice for the park bench area cleanup along Pickard Avenue. Block Electric, a little under $1,500 for some light repairs and banner removals. What we discovered with the new banners that have gone up is in the construction of them, where they, I guess, mount to the bars across the bottom, is the wind was catching them. They weren't strong enough at the bottom, however they manufactured them. So we needed to send them back and get some stitching put in across the bottom and reinforce them. And so we're working with that. That was a project that we did in conjunction with CMU was involved, the Convention Visitors Bureau in the East DDA. You saw a presentation on those banners. So we're still trying to tweak them a little bit so they can withstand the weather out there. Also, an invoice to Plant Moran, their final invoice, $773.75. To the east DDA, the west DDA, you'll see has a similar amount. That invoice is split 50/50 between the east and west DDA. That's the final invoice for the report that they did related to Public Act 57, where you all approved contract service agreement with Plant Moran back in March for them to take a look at this 900-page act, and I'll get into that in more detail in just a moment. Pleasant Time invoice just under $3,200 for the fall cleanup, some mulching and tree pruning along Pickard, and then Wilson Lawn Care, and I believe this should be their final invoice for mowing along Pickard in the fall. So again, that total is $8,254, and be happy to answer any questions you have on these. We will need a motion to approve payment so we can cut the check.
I would like to ask a question if I could, and you might have to do maybe a Scotia research on it. So twice this month, I went to a movie, and a third time I drove down Pickard and double checked, but the decorations from the corner of 20 all the way down to Isabella Road to the movie theater have not worked all season. Yeah, and it's kind of weird because the lights work. So I can't imagine that those are all photo eye. I'm sure that, so when the light kicks on, the GFI should kick on too, right? Is
We
how it
are
has to
aware
work.
of that, and I think Amy can maybe speak to that.
I just actually talked with Black today. He's been out there twice, just tripping the breaker. So they can't really pinpoint what decoration it is at this point because it's not happening when he flips it and then they all come on and everything's fine. So we use it as the wind that's catching it. If it's water, it's blowing it, something on one of those decorations. So at this point, it's just reaching out to us through the decoration company. They have worked. You just
Okay.
probably haven't seen them when you've been out there. It's been a little intermittent.
Okay,
I'm
well,
on
if
top
it's
of it.
tripping
I'm trying.
quickly, then, I guess my question is that we dealt with this last year on that same stretch, and we paid Black Electric to go out there and work on it last year at this time.
Well, we sent Black out there before we put the decorations up to make sure they checked all those things and everything was in working order this year. So, I don't know if it trips it immediately. They don't know that because it's not happening when they're out there. So I don't know if it's the next day, if it's windy, I don't know.
Yeah.
But I just spoke with Bruce at Black this morning, and rest assured, I'm gonna be contacting the decoration company so they can pinpoint that.
Why, yeah, because we hate to keep spending money to have them go out and check it when, if it's, obviously it's gotta be a short within.
From there. Yep.
It's the decorations, probably the decorations.
But it's
They
just
check
weird to
everything.
me that it would knock out that whole
Well, it hits the
stretch.
GFI for the whole,
That's what I'm saying, it wouldn't,
It wouldn't knock out
because
the
they're
whole
all
stretch.
independent for
they're independent
each pole.
GFIs?
So.
It doesn't sound like
sounds
it,
a low-
doesn't sound like
No,
it's
doesn't
independent
sound-
because
No.
you're not gonna have every
Why
one of
would they all
them trip
go
at the time. It must be
That
on
would
some
be our
circuit. Yeah,
It'd be our circuit, and it's probably a load issue. So
Yeah, that would-
maybe
Yeah,
Block should be able to figure that out. Get the specs from the manufacturer, see what kind of loads
right.
that those come up against, and then see what's, maybe just a bad circuit breaker somewhere.
It'd be, I guess we'd need to nip the bud now before we get, well, the decorations are still up.
Change
right?
the, maybe change the breaker or something. Could be a bad breaker on the whole.
Yeah, who's to say?
Yeah,
It just,
when you don't get
frustrating
out.
as much money as we put into that to
Right.
not have.
Well, they gotta do
particularly
a
that
process of
stretch.
elimination to eliminate something.
Yeah, I'm ready to
Go
go
out
out there
there.
with a ladder
Because it's working, the
myself.
lights are
well,
working.
all you gotta do is just unplug one every night.
Yeah.
Yes,
Sooner or
right.
later, it'll become apparent which one's the bad actor, but.
So I
On the
just,
way to the movie. you-
without bantering too much, because everybody wants to get out of here, but I wasn't sure if you were aware of it and
Oh, good.
it,
I'm there.
okay.
Yeah, we're trying to figure it out, and
Alright.
as soon as we have something more definitive, we'll let you know.
Okay.
Any more questions on the East DDA billables?
You gonna include the West DDA then too?
I like to go separate.
Okay,
because they're
that's
separate
fine.
signatures. So can I get a motion on the East DDA?
Make a motion to pay the East DDA bills as presented.
Support.
Motion by Zalid, support by Fig, to approve the East DDA payables. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Payables are approved.
Thank you. And on the West DDA, there's just one invoice to, it's the other half of the Plant Moran invoice, 773.75.
Motion to pay that
Smart.
list.
Motion by Coin, support by Bars, to pay the West DDA payables. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. And the West DDA payables are approved.
And then continuing on with the budget to actual report, or the, some call it the income statement for East DDA, beginning on page 5 of your agenda packet. Revenues year-to-date for the East DDA, $503,000, which is 107% of the budget. Very little change from the prior month. Booked some additional interest income. That was the only new revenue for the month of November. On the expense side, $248,000 year-to-date, which is 51% of budget. And again, the only more expenses, further through the year, but all related to normal budgeted operations. I will, there were some questions raised both as it relates to the East DDA and the West DDA at the last meeting about a couple of the accounts that primarily had to do with the project type of accounts, and I'd sent out a report to the EDA shortly after the meeting last month that I think answered those questions. If you have any more, I'd be happy to go into that report more fully. On the West DDA, again, it's just a receive and file. Revenue year-to-date, $323,000, a little over 100% of the budget. On the expense side, $216,000 year-to-date, which is 26% of the budget. Again, no material change on either the revenue or the expenses from the prior report. These reports are through November, so there'll be one more month of activity, then we'll be starting to close out the fiscal year. Be happy to answer any questions you may have on these budget to actual reports for either fund, if you have any.
We have the Lincoln Road project coming up, obviously, this year on the west. Do we have any idea on what the start date is going to be on that at all?
I do not have an idea on the start date. I do feel pretty confident and certain that it will be starting in the spring construction season, but I don't have anything resembling a date.
Okay.
And then to the balance sheet reports, which begin on page 8 of your agenda packet. The East DDA available fund balance is $1,380,000. As is normally the case, that's essentially all cash. No material change from the prior month. In the West DDA fund balance, $1,123,000. Again, essentially all in the form of cash. Both the balance sheet and the budget actual are just receipt and file.
Any more questions or comments on financial statements? Hearing none, let's let the record show financials were presented and filed.
The next item on your agenda is receipt of the Public Act 57 implementation / compliance report. As I briefly mentioned a moment ago, this is you engaged Plant Moran back in March of 18 to take a look at this new act. This act consolidated about 7 different public acts that dealt with various types of tax increment financing authorities, or downtown development authorities, or local development finance authorities. They all have slightly different names. They're all kind of about the same thing. It's where entities such as this EDA and then the respective West DDA and East DDA capture tax increments from other taxing units, such as the schools, or used to be the schools, captures taxes from the township, the county, the library until they opted out a year or so ago, you may recall that. So this act went into effect January 1 of 2019. The intent of the act is to standardize reporting requirements across all these different types of authorities, primarily to benefit and to inform the public and the state with regard to what taxes are being captured, how those are being spent, how those dollars that are being spent comport with development plans that have been approved at some point by bodies such as yourself, and generally to increase transparency. Annually, this authority, vis-a-vis us as staffing the authority, are to annually submit reports to the Treasury that are quite extensive. I'll get into that detail a little bit in a second. The Act requires the establishment of a dedicated website to post information about the authority and what it does and the programs and projects. And if you don't create your own authority, then you have a dedicated, or your own web page, you have a dedicated area within, in this case, the township's website to report this information. There is public reporting that's required to be made, and that can be submitted. What we're going to do is post it onto the website to satisfy that public reporting requirement. And it also requires the act that the authority hold 2 informational meetings each year that are posted. They're separate from budget meetings, they're separate from a normal monthly meeting, the intent of which is, again, to inform the public, inform the other taxing units where we're capturing the revenue, about how that money's being spent.
Mark, were those markers that we were supposed to hit by a certain time before this year's over, or are we?
I'll get to that in just a second.
Okay.
As part of the deliverables, we were provided a checklist, a schedule of when certain things need to be done by, and if we kind of follow this template, then we will know that we're in compliance. The public reporting requirement, that's due within 180 days of the end of the fiscal year, which in this case will be due June 30th of 2020. And amongst other things, we're going to be needing to post and some of this is easier, other areas is more time consuming, but we need to post the budget, the EDA budget, onto this dedicated website. the status of the tax increment financing plans that exist and may not have been looked at very closely by you all because they were adopted a number of years ago. The development plans, the development plan articulated what the goals were for the East DDA and what the goals were for the West DDA. And we've done a lot of work in each of those respective areas. And as we continue to do work in those areas, we just need to make it a little bit more public in terms of what we're doing, which is not a bad thing because it gives us an opportunity and you all an opportunity to explain to the public all the good work that you're doing out there. The other more complex reporting requirement, as you might imagine, is to the Department of Treasury, and that report is also due within 6 months of the end of the fiscal year, June 30th of 2020 in this case, and then annually each year thereafter. And there we're supposed to be talking about what the fund balance is in the fund, whether or not that's increasing or decreasing, which will signal to Treasury whether or not the money's being spent or not. Reporting information on the property values within the district. At its core, one of the goals of entities such as this is to preserve and grow property values within the districts. So we'll be needing to report that information so that people can see, what is happening to those property values. And then, as I mentioned, 2 informational meetings that we need to notify the taxing units that we're capturing the revenue from and the public, and have a meeting and let the public know, have the authority communicate to them the goals of the authority, the direction, the projects that are being contemplated for the upcoming fiscal year, those kinds of things. And so this report has taken those 900 pages of legislation, distilled it down into what we need to worry about so that we can comply. The risk of noncompliance is Treasury does have the authority per the Act to say you guys are not allowed, we're not allowed to capture these tax increment revenues until we get into compliance. So, just wanted, that report has been submitted. I think it's going to be very helpful to us as staff to make sure that the authority is in compliance with this new act, because we don't want to risk the West DDA. Just let me look real quick. The East DDA, we budget $400,000 a year in tax increment revenue. So it's a lot of money that could be at risk. I don't anticipate that be at risk, but this is what we're talking about. On the east, or on the west side, the West DDA, a little over $300,000 of tax increments that we capture from all these other taxing units. So that's my report on this subject matter and the other items on the agenda. I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Good reporting. I appreciate this information.
You're welcome.
That's good to know what you need.
Yes.
Supposed to do.
So when they're talking about the public meeting, that's something that will be held starting next year. They'll want to do 2 public meetings that are open to anybody that can make it.
Yes, I mean, just as these meetings are open to the public and we have certain noticing requirements per the Open Meeting Act, we need to follow those. And then there are some additional noticing requirements for these two informational meetings, primarily the reporting, the notification requirements to the taxing units that we're capturing taxes from. So we'll have to notice the county administrator's office, the intermediate school district office. Hey, there's this informational meeting that's going to be held by the Township's Economic Development Authority. We'll be reviewing activity that's occurred in the East DDA district, the West DDA district, looking forward, what the plans are for the subsequent fiscal year. And it will, I can sense right now that one of the, as a practical matter, it's going to require, so that we have something to say at these meetings, is going to require that the staff help the authority work through a process of being more active in terms of project, you know, how's this money to be spent, and it's not a stretch that the folks that we're capturing the revenue from, if they see balances building, they may begin to wonder why they're sharing their revenue with the authority.
Yeah, not spending it, okay.
All right, thank you very much. Unless there are other questions.
No more comments, questions on that? So we're done with this is the extent of the services from Plant Moran?
Yes, for what I'm
How do
giving
we
to
make
the
sure that this
board.
gets done? It's like if you need more consulting hours from Plant Moran for staff or anything, this is stuff you guys can
I'm
get done?
satisfied that what we have is going to be very useful to us. We're going to be the ones that have to do the reporting, and we can do that with this information.
Okay,
It'll be,
I just want to make sure you guys have all the tools and everything
I
you need
appreciate
to
that,
get
but
that
I
done.
feel that we do.
Okay,
That's why we wanted this done. If we would have needed to wade through the act and
oh yeah, this is,
boil it down
Well
into
worth it.
something that
Yep.
is this manageable, we'd still be working on it.
yep. So far as this request for EDA board action, do you want a motion to receive this, or?
There's no motion, there's
Just
no,
record,
nothing to
file?
receive, or no motion, no actions needed.
Okay,
But I appreciate you back in March, looking forward enough so that you could be willing to spend the money on something like this, so that now we know what we need to be doing when we need to do it by.
yep, very good.
It looks like a real clear explanation, even though it's very complicated. It sounds very digestible.
If
and-
we check all those boxes, then we know we're in compliance.
That sounds
Thanks
good.
for your
Yep,
work
no.
on it. Thanks for your work.
Works for
on
me.
it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anything else we have tonight? Pending business? Any more comments, questions? For the good of the order? Hearing none, we'll call it adjourned, 5:45. And we'll see everybody January 21st.
Good enough.
Thank you.
Thank you.